And without even touching a plant, I often say that you can get the best medicine from the forest without ever picking a plant. And that's just existing in nature. A lot of these plants that have kept people safe for thousands of years are at risk of losing their habitat in which they grow. It's in part my mission to bring people to these plants and let them realize the rich bounty that grows in the southern Appalachian mountains. Let's bring back bioregional food and medicine while conserving our forests. By better understanding these plants, we can help ourselves and save the future. Conservation efforts are typically geared towards large tracts of land or federal and state lands. Landowners making up hundreds of thousands of acres are left without resources, not knowing they can play a part. Let's look at what we, as small landowners, can do to make a difference. There are numerous herbs and shrubs that grow well in these so-called waste spaces. It's early spring, and this is some beautiful yellow root. What a wonderful herb. And I want to talk to you a lot about this. But you know, at the beginning of this journey, I looked up herbalism, and it said something like the study and the use of the medicinal qualities of plants. So I guess that's what I'm doing here, but it's so much more to me. And I want to explain to you that people and plants have interacted for thousands of years, and it's contributed to our well-being through food, medicine, and culture. We're at the southern tip of the Appalachian mountain range. There's so many things to share, and I want to provide to you a little bit of context about what I want to share. And that's the fact is that there are plants out here that will benefit us, and I want you to know that we can benefit them. When people consider the value of the land around here, they're really looking at one thing, and that's the timber. Large tulip poplars like this behind me and around me here provide great canopy cover and are wonderful trees. I want to show you a few examples of how something in the understory of a forest can provide value for you and your family, and also for the forest and nature. As we walk, we'll look at a few plants. Here's a great example of an Appalachian delicacy here, smilax tips, and this may be a little bit old, but this right here is compared to asparagus. These come up readily in the springtime. Some amazing trees grow in our forests, like the black locust, an alternative to pressure-treated, chemically harsh lumber used on homesteads. And like the black walnut, a wonderful source of food and land-based iodine. I want to acknowledge that we're on Cherokee territory and that there have been practices of land management that's gone on in this area for thousands of years. I'm really appreciative of those practices and the fact that I get to walk this land now and take advantage of all that's been done in the past. So many forgotten flavors of southern Appalachia like spice bush, sassafras, and there's just so much we could learn about this that I feel like is being forgotten and not shared enough. That's one of my goals here on the property, is I love to get to talk to people on a regular basis about plants. I hear so many stories and it's life-changing. And we can take spice bush for instance. It's a really wonderful plant that gathers often in riparian areas, and it's a multi-stem shrub that produces a late summer fruit that the birds adore. It's also something we could consume. The leaves and the inner bark are really aromatic. They contain volatile oils and they make wonderful broths, teas, soups, and stews. And this is a healthy addition to any diet. This is in the Laurelaceae, the avocado family even. So there's going to be some healthy fats and oils in those fruits. Overall, this is a wonderful plant that seems to be forgotten about. In fact, the power company was just in here trying to cut this down. And I had to stop them. I said, guys, smell this, check this out. This is a beautiful thing and it's never going to cause you any problems. So I think awareness is huge. We need to spread this awareness. We have a little bit of fruit starting to set. This flowers in early spring before any leaves emerge. It's also a good benefit to a lot of butterflies and native pollinators. This is just one example of many. So the name fever bush comes from the fact that this may provide a little bit of a diaphoretic action, raising the core body temperature, especially if you drink a tea that's warm and you drink it kind of fast. Sometimes how you interact with the plant is going to affect the body. There's really wonderful things about this. It's a very nutritive plant, and it's also been called forsythia of the woods. If you know the traditional Chinese medicine plant forsythia, you realize it blooms really early in the springtime, and this does as well. Now, if you crush a leaf, or maybe even scratch a little bit of that so that the inner bark gets disrupted, you'll get this wonderful aromatic smell, and it's kind of similar to a cardamom or a nutmeg, lemony or citrusy, a lot of people say. And it's really tasty, and I think all people could enjoy a little spice bush tea. This is something that I really provide for kids that come over with camps and things like that. I love to share this with them. We can pick this quite sustainably as it's here growing into the path. I've noticed that it'll often grow over a foot a year in these twig tips, and most of the time that's my sustainable harvest, are these twig tips or leaves that can go into my tea or my broth. And it can form thickets down in here around the creeks and the lower areas. Just so many great uses to this plant. Some herbs that we're really focusing on here and trying to plant up include ginseng, ramps, and golden seal. We just had some herbs shipped in, and these were from a really nice guy up in West Virginia. And golden seal, of course, is my understanding is it's one of the most over-harvested herbs that there is. So we're going to kind of carefully separate these, and we have these great little rhizomes to plant. They have little fresh buds on them here, and so we're going to spread these throughout the woods as well. And there's really good medicine in there, and it's got a lot of commercial value, and that's why it's so over-harvested. ramps are the allium, a native allium of the South, and it's really delicious food. And of course, there's quite a bit of media and news on this. You know, if you're in the South, you've probably heard of ramps, or even in the Northeast. And we're going to plant those just out of conservation and because we all like our onions and our alliums. So. Of course, most people know about the ginseng. We have a couple young plants in here. We're going to be careful with them, so we want to keep all the roots we can. But these are some young, basically wild-grown ginseng, and these are at least a couple years, maybe even 3, maybe older. We're going to put these in the ground and let some seed stalks start coming of age here on the property, so that we can then harvest that seed and spread it from there. All of these plants have major ethical concerns about wild harvesting, and we don't really recommend wild harvesting, but rather find some land or find a patch that you can steward. And you can take a little, and it is great medicine and it's great food, but you always want to just make sure that patch is going to continue to grow, and you're not actually diminishing the patch or taking from it in any way. So a while back, I was going to sign up for some regular walks I take with some people around here that are really wonderful to walk in the woods to. Absolutely love being in nature and learning from people. There's just so much to learn. It's a never-ending subject. But I couldn't get into any of my classes. I realized that this has become certainly very popular, and I was wondering, like, oh man, I can't sign up for, I had all these classes that I normally love to take, and I realized, like, is there really a shortage of people sharing this information, sharing information about the plants, about the history of the land? And I realized there was, and that's what led me to open my doors to the public and start letting people come here so I could share with them what I know. Reaching out to people and letting them come here to learn plants has changed my life in so many ways. It's an absolutely wonderful experience to get to spend time with people that are interested in plants. Here's another great example of a product that grows in the understory of a mature canopy often. This is American witch hazel. This is a beautiful shrub. This one's gotten quite the limelight here. Something must have fallen at the right time, and this thing, I get a lot of sun. I'm spreading out. It was covered in flowers, really, that persisted through December and January. And it's absolutely amazing to see this tree putting on this show, in the middle of winter. And that's a good way to identify it. Other plants that look like this include, hazelnuts and the hazel alder sometimes, so you got to really watch it. But if you can identify your American witch hazel, you can make your own extractions. And we all know this probably from the skincare products. It's tightening and toning. It's astringent. There's tannic acid inside. Traditionally, Native Americans would use the bark primarily, and that just means collecting these twig tips from healthy stands and in a sustainable manner. If you collect your own twig tips or even the leaves, in modern cases, people are starting to use because of the sustainability, because of how it's a little bit easier on the tree to take a leaf harvest instead of just the branch harvest. So either parts that you want to use, so long as you're doing it with respect and in mind that your witch hazel keeps growing and keeps expanding and you're not shrinking a patch. We'll harvest this, and I'll make mouthwashes, all sorts of external skin washes, and this is so different than the products you'll buy in the store. Most witch hazel from the store is a distilled product, and it has an alcohol content. This is sometimes really harsh on the skin. It's not always what you want, especially if you think maybe a newborn baby or something like that. Now, if you make your own out of these twig tips, I stuff as many as I can in a mason jar. I'll pour my almost boiling water over it, and I'll let it steep for sometimes 4 or 5 hours. It'll turn a nice golden color. It'll have a little witch hazel aroma that you may be familiar with, and it makes an excellent skin wash or something, externally primarily. Anything, inflammation, irritation, maybe diaper rash on a child, just about anything, this would be a great gentle medicine to start with. The name witch hazel has a few different meanings that it could have come from. Maybe it's for witching for water, maybe it's the little witch caps that come in. Who really knows? Either way, this tree's been around for a long time and been being used. Native Americans would steam it in their sweat lodges for aching bodies. So many good uses for this tree and for this gentle medicine. This is a great example of a small American ginseng. This is in its second year of growth and it still doesn't have the characteristic 5 leaves that ginseng often does. It still has a lot of growing left to do. And what people don't realize is that this can take an incredibly long time to reach maturity. And often people are digging 50, 60, and 70-year-old roots to make a quick dollar. And to me, this just isn't worth it. This plant can be grown, given the right habitat. We just got to give it time. I think people that are into nature have a struggle in this world. And it's a world of how we can live in harmony with nature and still exist in our modern world and have friends and have fun and do all these things that seem to be necessary for our modern life. And it can be very challenging. And I want to tell people that there are ways that we can do this. We all have to try and we all have to work together. We need you to get up and start being an advocate for nature in any way that you can. There's probably programs in your area, native plant nurseries, so many different things that you can do to advocate for nature. I've always felt like something was missing in life. And I never quite knew what it was. And it wasn't until maybe about 10 years ago when I really saw people working in a different way with the land around them. And they were interacting with it and it seemed normal, it seemed natural, it seemed primal, innate in everyone. I got to hang out with different people throughout my life and I realized that, not everything I was told was true. That the land around us can provide in abundance. And a little respect and gratitude can go a long way to seeing that abundance. So it was those people that worked in my life that really showed me this message and showed me this world that was always underneath my feet, but never visible. And so they broke down this green wall, this massive forest that all looked like one big organism. They broke it down into hundreds of organisms and hundreds of personalities. Tons of plants, animals, bugs, insects, fungi. So many great things. I've always been passionate about sharing. This isn't anything new for me. So I started to do walks with friends and families. I said, hey, let's go outside. Let's look at what's in your yard, and I would show people this and that, and people would truly listen. It's like the world was longing for this reconnection. So I started out by offering, 1 to 2 hour walks here on the property. Awesome to see so many people drive all the way out here into a little bit of the middle of nowhere and come walk around while I ramble about these things that I love, these plants that are around us. So the Southeast is a really rich area. It's botanically diverse, and it's a really great place to study plants. It can be overwhelming, but there's a lot here. And so throughout my travels in the Southeast, I've learned so much from so many different people, and I can't say enough that you should get outside with people that have dedicated their life to this information and just learn what you can, glean everything you can. There's fewer and fewer of people like that, and they're getting harder to find. We grow a garden here at Everwilder, and I want to share a little bit more with you about some of the wonderful plants that can grow in this area and provide sources of food and medicine and craft, renewable resources, all while keeping this mature canopy intact. This is really an important concept that not a lot of people are understanding these days, and I want to spread awareness of that message. Here's a perfect example of a wonderful food that is nearly forgotten. I simply refer to this as sochan or sochani. And if you try to translate that to the English language, it's just going to come off as vegetable. That's what we were told. And this most certainly is a wonderful, aromatic, dark, leafy green that holds up well to cooking. And it grows all over these wet meadows. This was a top 5 green for the Cherokee, a top 5 cooked green. Maybe even in the top 3, along with things like poke and a few other plants. This is only harvested, these shoots, early in the springtime. It's getting a little mature, and you can see this old flower stalk. These can grow great tall flower stalks, sometimes above my head here in the garden, and they're wonderful for our bugs and butterflies and all those native pollinators. You could also call this green-headed coneflower. And some of you may know some other coneflowers that are really wonderfully used by people. There are a multitude of resources just growing in between the rows of the garden. Things like plantain and clover. All these can make wonderful medicinal preparations and can help provide an income while trying to spread this awareness about conservation and other wonderful plants. We have things like chickweed and radishes and coneflowers that all just spread naturally through this area. And we come in and harvest as time allows and as needed for providing some extra value-added products or something that may help you make the ends meet while growing ginseng, golden seal, and some of those other more long-term medicinals. Many of these herbs grow in wet, even poor soil areas, and you can take advantage of growing these herbs, providing a little bit of revenue in historically poor soils. Things like marshy, boggy, wet areas. Boneset grows wonderfully. And this is a perennial herb that has a long history of use, and if you grew up in this area, you probably had a little bit of boneset hanging in the rafters some time ago. It's wonderful for influenza and fevers that chill the bone. So we're in an area of the garden that I'm letting do its own thing, and there's quite a bit in here, from the wonderful yellow root to this beautiful Solomon seal. Now, yellow root is a great source of berberine. It's slow growing, but it's abundant in areas around here and can be utilized for many, many different uses, from antibacterial uses to digestive upset. One of the easiest ways to take advantage of some of the great uses of this plant is to simply chew on a little piece of the stem. This works great for so many digestive complaints. And I've seen a little piece of this stem, as little as 1 inch, grow and live when kept moist. This is a resilient healer we should keep an eye on. The Solomon seals produces a little seed that'll hang underneath this plant, and it can be spread like that, or it can be busted up by root trunks. Typically, this plant likes disturbance. The roots of this will send up more shoots next year if you come in and dig a little here and there. Solomon seal like this and other species are an underrated food crop and could be considered a delicacy in the right hands.
Some people think that humans cannot do good when we go into nature. They want to put nature in a glass box. And I just don't believe this is the case. It's not until nature works in your life through food or through medicine or through some way that you really become empowered and want to protect it. We need to get more people outside experiencing these plants firsthand. We're in the back of the garden here, and this area gets a lot of shade, so inside our fences, a little bit protected from the wildlife, we grow plants like bloodroot, ramps, ginseng, golden seal once again. Bloodroot's a great example of a at-risk woodland medicinal. It's a wonderful, wonderful plant for old-time uses, include cough and croup, pneumonia. It's great for getting things out of the lungs as an expectorant. This is not a plant that I would want to lose. It's really, really powerful and has some toxic warnings that you want to be careful with. This divides really well by root propagation. In other words, if you dig mature blood roots, you can kind of bust these knuckles off of this root and turn one plant into 5 plants. Then give it a year or 2 and do it again. In this way, you can have mountainsides covered in bloodroot. And there still are mountains covered in bloodroot in this area. But just because something is locally abundant, or you see a lot of it, doesn't mean it's abundant for the world. Bloodroot's one of those plants that has many, many commercial industries that are after that root, from natural dyes to horse feed additives, dental products. They all use bloodroot, and anytime that you have these products being marketed to millions of people, you have an issue of over-harvesting the plant. It's something that we want to plant out of conservation so that we always have the wonderful medicine that it gives.
Child, come back to the wild. Come and sing a song outside. Plants and trees, they come alive. Learn the names and become friends. The leaves and plants have stories to share. How we live and breathe the same air. And we open our eyes wide. All together we can be wise. Back to the wild, child. Come back to the wild, little child. Come back to the wild. Come back to the wild, and we open our eyes wide. All together we can be wise.
So when my little girl was born, I knew I wanted a different life for her than what I had growing up. It's not that mine was bad or anything that I regret, but I wanted to try to shape the future through the children. I do this through survival camps and other plant-based knowledge. And we have people out here on a regular basis, and it's really awesome to watch these kids grow. This has really changed something inside of me, and I really hope to do this for the rest of my life. If I could just go around and advocate for nature, I absolutely would. To make ends meet through the forest farming, through the gardening, through the nature camps, it's a wonderful way to live. And I want to encourage you to do so, or to find someone you know that wants to do so, or to find someone that's already doing it in your area. And I want you to collaborate with those people, and let's lift each other up and make this place a better world for everyone.